underground storage tanks for the stormwater called detention tanks to kind of store the stormwater and then let it out at a controlled rate.
Mm-hmm.
And that cost, I don't remember, with a good bit of money that, in my opinion, we thought there probably shouldn't have had to spend, but
Wow, it's a big contraption for.
There. What are you looking at?
just pictures. And there's the road, and those are the storm drain catch basins. So it's getting pretty close to time to pave it. There's a manhole to get down to the stormwater tank. Lucy. Village Road. This, I think, is Glasgow, Scotland.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's a little town up in northwestern Scotland called Mallory, which I really love. Just a little tiny town on the water.
Or embellishing? Were they just simple, plain, or
No, they
some
embellish
fancy?
them.
Okay, so start that story again. You went to some prisoners that were working around the river.
At the sand pump, down close to Big Rock, where Rennie used to take me to go fishing.
But wasn't there a guy with a gun or something?
A security?
I mean,
Well, I don't know, there may have been,
You envision this today. Fast forward to now.
but these were trustees, remember?
They were trusted prisoners.
And Sandy Ridge was really not a high security place anyway.
Okay.
What do you mean they were trusted prisoners?
Trustees.
Oh, trustees.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I think that means the ones that are trusted, maybe.
Trustworthy
To
or
not
something.
make
I
trouble.
think crime was not nearly as crimey back then as it is now.
Yeah. So anyway, so all this time, they're acquiring property and building stuff on the property. And I don't think I ever, until lately, gave him the credit for just always doing something, moving forward, you know.
A lot of ambition
And
and energy.
not sure where that came from, but then Papa Hall was a pretty successful businessman.
And he did the cement, right? Finishing.
Correct. And the plastering.
Plastering.
That living room in the house was all plastered.
Mm-hmm.
And Papa Hall made that happen. He didn't do the work himself.
Well, wasn't the dining room plaster also?
It was,
Well, it was more stucco, wasn't it?
yeah, but that would be the same thing. And
Yeah.
back then, that would be real stucco, which is kind of the same.
So like I just said, I don't think I ever, until, 5-10 years ago, gave him the credit for all of the things that he did. And pretty impressive.
Well, you've been kind of like that in your lifetime, haven't you? You've always been real,
Well,
had a drive to accomplish things.
to some
And
extent.
it started at a very early age.
We built the house in Asheville. did all right with the power company. I mean, I was barely 30 years old when I got promoted to plant superintendent, which was nobody. All of my contemporaries were much older.
Where were we living when this happened?
I got this tractor supply also. What?
It's nice.
Tractor supply.
Asheville.
You were superintendent in Asheville?
No, but I got promoted. I started in Hartsville as junior engineer.
Mm-hmm.
Moved to Asheville, I think, promoted to plant engineer. And then to operating and results supervisor. And then moved to Raleigh. I was a staff engineer for 2 years, working in the power plant construction area.
Mm-hmm.
And then to Goldsboro for 4 years,
And what was your title in Goldsboro?
plant superintendent.
Bill, do you remember anything about what motivated you to apply with CP&L? Was that like your first job out of college?
Yeah. And I guarantee you that if we could figure it out, Mr. Briggs had some influence in that, because he was always interested in power.
Okay.
I'm talking power generation.
Right, right.
And so anyway,
At NC State, during your time of graduation, did they have job fairs like they have now, where people?
Yeah.
I mean, how did you know what the choices for you would be coming out of school?
I'm not sure. I worked for CP&L one summer.
Okay.
Because, see, I had to go, nine semesters, because I got crossed up and missed a credit or something. And then went to work for them full time. Just Oscar essentially doubled the size of Hawkes Upholstery Company by adding that extension on the back. And downstairs was where the upholsterers were, and upstairs, which had a low ceiling on that back, was where the cutting room was, the big tables. And I don't know why he made the decision, but at some point, or I assume they decided to get out of that business and moved the cutting table and that to the meat house. And that's where one of the women that worked at the upholstery shop would do the cutting, and I don't remember where the sewing machines were, but they had to sew the pocketbooks.
Yeah, I don't remember anybody sewing there. That's what I'm thinking.
They may not have.
I think they took them off.
Yeah, they
and
may not have.
did that somewhere else.
And
Although maybe there was against the back wall. I don't remember.
and then, as I've told y'all, Paul and Nana would sit there at night and what they call stuffing the pocketbooks, putting that inside cardboard and all. And then he would load up about twice a week and go out and sell them. Or not sell them directly, but he had somebody that had a welding shop to build these racks that he could go in and hang them on. And they made some money doing that.
How long did they do that? You said that twice a week.
I don't remember, Charlie, but it was a while, probably 4 or 5 years, because that was about the time I went off to college. And
I think they were doing that when we were kids
Oh, I remember them doing that.
in the 70s.
okay. I'm not 100% certain of my timing, but I remember one summer that I drove. They had this little Chevrolet truck with sides on it to deliver furniture, and I drove it some. And the railroad was called High Point, Thomasville, and Denton Railroad. And I remember taking stuff down there and unloading it at the freight depot. And that's all it was freight. Truck driver.
So there was a guy named Don that used to help Oscar.
What?
Don.
Don Isom?
Yeah, and he would talk like Donald Duck. Do you
Yeah.
remember that?
I do
I
remember.
don't.
So what did he do for Oscar?
He worked, I think, back in the frame shop, installing the springs and things. Because they would buy the frames, and they would buy the springs, and then they would put it together back in the back, and then bring them up front to where the upholsterers were.
But didn't he run his own upholstery shop back there later on? In the back?
I don't remember.
I think he did, because I think even he was still doing that. Because I took something in there to get it upholstered. Or bought some fabric anyway. He had fabrics.
But we added to that building back there, that little side area, and then under kind of a basement. So looking back on it and putting it together, that he was always doing something.
Back up to Hawk's upholstery, because I've never heard. After the pieces were assembled, then what happened to them? Was there also, did the Hawks also sell to individuals, or they sell to larger?
No, they sold into
furniture?
Eckerd's drugstore chain.
Okay.
Well, that was the pocketbooks.
What?
The pocketbooks.
Yeah.
What about the furniture?
Yeah, but the furniture.
Oh,
What,
well,
how was that distributed for sale? Was that?
they never had a showroom per se. He would travel,
Okay.
like he traveled to Goldsboro, and I forget, maybe it was the Rose Brothers that were his customers, and he'd call on them and sell.
Okay, so he'd take orders and then supply
Yeah,
some sort of
but
department store.
he had customers all over. I think, as I remember, Eastern North Carolina for the furniture.
Boy,
Don't you have some books in the garage that have pictures? Samples?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think I took one back to Texas, but I saw some more up there just yesterday.
Alderman's photos. They'd take the furniture down to Alderman's and they set up the showrooms and stuff and make the commercial pictures.